Hello and welcome to Read Becca. I just wanted to drop in and chat about a book I read, The Passenger by Ulrich Alexander Boschwitz and translated by Philip Boehm. Now, this is a novel that was originally written in the 1930s, and that makes it a slightly odd one because I picked this up for this year's Booktube Prize, meaning it has just been recently released. This was a recovered manuscript that was just put out. So this is a story of being a Jew in 1938 Berlin, from a Jew who lived through that time. And so there's a lot of context that I have to talk about with this, starting from the introduction. There's an intro from Andre Asselman, and I think he did a great job of imparting that history of what the author actually went through that I would have never been aware of. Boschwitz actually went through something I had never heard of before, and probably my own historical ignorance, but as a German, he made it out into England, and Germans, regardless of whether they were Jewish, were enemies during the war. And so he was treated as an enemy and transported to an internment camp in Australia. And that meant that he was there with other Germans, including Nazis. So he was stuck there in this internment camp even after having gotten out of Germany. Then once finally things shifted and Jews were being treated differently, he was able to leave and was able to get on a boat and died in 1942 on the boat due to a submarine attack. So these were collected manuscripts that he had written just before and intended to have published as the book, but it was kind of a rough draft, as I understand. So from the beginning, this was interesting because within that first intro, it's discussed how much he lost faith in humanity, how much he lost faith in society. And this book starts from that perspective and is the framing of this story. One of my other books that I had for the Booktube Prize ended that way, with a letter from one character to another, imparting that they didn't think that society could get better and they had lost all faith in society. So yeah, it's a very depressing and absurd place to begin, and you need that framing to begin this story, because in this story we are following a man who is a wealthy Jew in 1938 Germany who doesn't really understand what's going on. He is seeing it all happen and can't believe it, really. So he believes that he's going to get his fortune, that his son in France is going to be able to get him a permit to travel there, and everything is going to be fine. And as things increasingly go wrong, he just doesn't get it. He can't see why these things are happening to him and those around him. So to get across the absurdity of what he's going through, at one point he is traveling, and he is very lucky in that he doesn't understand what's going on because he continues acting normally. He's not anxious and stressed out like every other Jew he has a run-in with. He's just perfectly calm, traveling to cafes and getting on trains. He has no problems whatsoever. So at this point he is in a cafe discussing with a waiter. The waiter is commenting that he wishes that the Jews would just wear armbands because that would make it easier for everyone. Still, it would be good for the others. My brother-in-law, for example, looks a little like Jewish, but of course he's an Aryan. It's only that he has to constantly explain and prove everything over and over. That's too much to ask of anyone. Yes, it is, said Silverman. So these people surrounding him are completely lacking self-awareness that what they're trying to put the Jews through is this terrible thing that they're trying to avoid for themselves, where even a small inconvenience is too much for them. And I think this does a great job of getting across how much propaganda there is, even at the point where he is beginning to realize things are going horribly wrong and then is forced to leave his home. At that point, there is propaganda out there that the destruction of Jewish property, that these people's homes being ripped apart and then being taken away, is actually the Jews having declared war on Germany and destroying the property. So it's a very twisted message, and we see that throughout this, where many people think that one of his friends, in fact, that he has these interactions with, that he has been in business with, is saying, well, all of this hate for the Jews is bringing Germany together, and there's always been some cultural outgroup, so this isn't really worse than it ever has been. It's not any worse than me having bad luck. So this friend of his is justifying it, what's going on, and is kind of downplaying it because of all the propaganda that has been sown in culturally. So really powerful depiction in the background, just from these micro interactions between him and these other people. So what happens is that this man Otto is wealthy, is trying to collect his fortune. He keeps thinking he's going to be able to sell everything and get all his money and be wealthy and travel to France, as I said, and he has no leverage for that. So that doesn't go as well as he would like, but he winds up anyway with, because he's wealthy, a large briefcase full of cash, and he can't really do anything. He's trying to figure out where to go, where he can be safe, and he winds up on a train. And that's kind of the story here, is that because he is unable to get abroad because of his position, he keeps thinking, well, things are going to get better. Things are going to clear up and it's going to go back to normal. So I just have to kind of wait it out. And so he keeps returning to these trains. He gets off and goes to a hotel or a cafe and then gets back on the train because he doesn't know where else to go. And so he is stuck in this existence. And in the end, that is very much him shouting at the world and saying, you know, I just want to get out. How do I get out of this? And then recounting that his only way out is to get into this transient existence on these trains. That's the only place he has to go. So it's a really powerful narrative of a social lens toward people and how the power of propaganda really shifted that. I think that it used very over-the-top interactions between these people, so it certainly falls in the satirical vein. At one point, a character we don't really like gets kicked in the crotch, so there's a little bit of slapstick there. But I think the satire worked for me, it being just a little bit over the top. However, I think that the actual telling, maybe the translation, was a little clunky in the language, and that may just be that this is a little dated because it was originally from 1938 and is now being picked up. So I don't know whether that was authorial voice or translation, but yeah, it was a little clunky in the actual writing for me. So I think this was a very powerful read that really gets across the normalization of hate and dehumanization of an entire group that I can see echoes of in the United States and things that are happening legislatively right now that hit very close to home. So I think this would be a very important book to pick up and read for just about anybody. So that's it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching.